Hey guys, hello and welcome to Naveed for Speed. In today's video, I am going to be exploring and driving this car here. It's the Genesis GV60. Now, who are Genesis? Genesis are the premium and luxury brand version of Hyundai. And this particular car, the GV60, is their first fully electric car. It comes in three specs, three trim levels, including the premium, the sport and the sport plus. The one that I have here is the premium. It's the most entry level version of the car, and it starts at around £53,000. So I'll show you how it looks on the outside, I'll show you what features you get on the inside, and I'll take it for a drive and show you exactly how it feels on the road. But if we take a look at the exterior to start with, I'll start at the front over here because I want to mention this Genesis badge to begin with. So the badge is it has the sort of wings on it, which kind of looks a little bit like Bentley, and in certain versions of Genesis vehicles people do mistake them for Bentley cars. It does give off that sort of luxury, that premium vibe. At the front you get this grille on the bottom here and this rather subtle front splitter, it seems, this sort of bodywork, which I think look really good, makes the car look a little bit more sporty and cool. But the front of the car is quite polarizing. It does divide opinions, especially with this front area here. It sort of has a bit of like a shark nose thing going on here, but it just looks all really quite smooth. And I suspect if you drive this on long journeys, you will get a load of bugs splattered on the car, so you do have to worry about your paintwork over here. I think maybe some PPF if you buy this car, although I don't exactly know how easy it will be to put on this car. But yeah, just bear that in mind. This particular car looks really nice in this particular color. It's called Savile Silver, and yeah, especially at the back of the car it looks really nice. I'll take you over there shortly, but I do want to mention these headlights first that you get here in this sort of parallel sort of formation. I think it looks really good, looks really sleek, give the car this sort of cool smoldering look. I think when the lights are on it looks really good, especially in the dark. As we move towards the side of the car, you'll notice this particular car sits on 19-inch alloy wheels. Now that's because this is the entry-level premium version. When it comes to the sport version and the sport plus, you can get 20 and 21-inch wheels. I'm quite glad that this car sat on the 19 because it gives the car a better ride quality, as I'll mention when I take it out to drive. You also, as an optional extra, this particular one's got copper brake calipers, so that looks really cool. Although with this wheel design you can't really see them that much, but yeah, they do really give that car a bit more of a premium feel. I always like anything with copper in there. As we move towards the side of the car, you'll notice this particular thing over here. Now that's for the facial recognition. Unfortunately, I don't have that set here today because when I had the car delivered to me, the gentleman who delivered it tried to set the facial recognition system, but it just wouldn't recognize my face. It said that I have a face covering on, which I suspect it recognized my beard as a face covering. Unfortunately, I'm not able to mess around or play with that today because you need both keys to do that, and I only have one key. As we move further to the back of the car, you'll notice the sort of sloping roofline effect that you got here and the sort of lightning bolt Z piece of trim here. I think that looks really cool. It sort of gives that whole car a bit more of a haunched sort of low down sporty coupe sort of feel. This car is a crossover. It's not a full-blown SUV. I'll explain exactly what the seating position is like and the ride height, but in general it's got a bit more of a sporty feel to it. And although this is the premium trim, the car does come in more sporty versions like the sport and the sport plus trims. As we move towards the back of the car, you'll notice you've got this sort of rear spoiler which does split the rear windscreen sort of up here and down here, but again, I'll tell you a little bit more about what visibility feels like when I take the car out to drive. And then you've got massive Genesis badging on the back, similar tail lights at the back as well in that sort of parallel formation. And let me show you the boot. As I open the boot, power assisted boot as well, you get, there's your boot. You get around, I think it's about 421 litres of boot space, and you could put the rear seats down, which gives you around 1500 litres of luggage space as well. A slight load lip to get over, but you get sort of this metal plate over here to so you don't scuff the plastic on the car. But otherwise, yeah, underneath you got just some space to put some cables and some accessories. But yeah, that's basically a lot. Overall, I think especially looking at it from the back of the car, I really like the way that it looks. I think that the spoiler sort of finishes off everything really nicely and it gives it that more sporty look. I'll take you around the interior of the car and I'll show you how that is, because it is a massive plus point of this car. The interior looks really good. Let's go see it now. So the interior of the Genesis GV60 is a massive plus point of the car. It comes finished, this particular version, in this very light, airy interior. It is finished in dark grey and glacier white. That's what this colour scheme is called. And I think it looks really well. I'm not usually a fan of light coloured interiors. They do get dirty quite easily. But this particular car looks really nice and premium, quite luxury. And then you also have this sort of finish on certain parts of the trim, around the door, around the dashboard and around the centre console. And that's got these digital dot aluminium is what it's called. That's the sort of pattern that it's got in there. It does really look quite good. And it really makes you feel cool and light. The steering wheel is finished in this white coloured leather as well, with stitching in there, with all these buttons on there. And again, I'll show you some of these buttons when I take the car out to drive. But it's nice and big, chunky, round actually. It doesn't have a flat bottom or a flat top. It's round, but really nice to hold. And it comes with these recuperation pedals. Again, I'll show you what they're like when I take the car out to drive. I'm just going to start the car for a second because I need to show you this that's in the center console. This is the crystal ball gear selector, which by default is like this. At night it looks really cool because it has the lights in the background, but if I start the car, you'll notice that turns, and now you've got your gear selector, so you can simply press. I didn't have my foot on the brake. That's another thing about this car. The car doesn't just flash up messages, it will actually talk to you and tell you off. So if I do this, press brake pedal to change gear, it's telling me that I need to press the brake pedal. So that's really interesting about this car. I'm not a massive fan of that, but it's there for everybody and anybody and everybody to be able to use, so it makes things a little bit easier in the end. In front of the driver, you've got a 12.3 inch instrument cluster and a 12.3 inch central infotainment screen as well. And yeah, it's really quite good in terms of responsiveness, but there are loads of menus that you have to go through for your settings and your EV and your navigation, and there's just all sorts going on here. But it is really quite easy to use, and it's within reach of the driver, so that's pretty good as well. Really good. The climate control is in the screen at the bottom here, which again, it's in a touch screen that gives you haptic feedback, which I'm not always a fan of, but by default it stays on and it's down there. And then you got some physical buttons to change the temperature and your settings as well. That's pretty good. And then you've got some shortcut buttons down here for your infotainment system. Always really nice and easy to use, because because that screen is easy to reach for the driver. This sort of rotary selector that you have down here, you don't really need to use this. I've not used that at all, but again, it's really nice that it's there in case you do want to use it. I've also noticed this particular thing over here. That's your fingerprint scanner. This car has, obviously it's got facial recognition, it's got fingerprint scanner as well, and it also has password if you want to lock the car like that. And all you do is when you get into the car, you can put your password in, or the car can recognize your face, and it can take all the settings to that particular driver's profile which you will have saved in the past. So that's really quite good. Let's talk about storage around this car, because you've got some door bins which aren't the biggest. I'm not a massive fan of the size of the door bins, and you've got this sort of stowage area over here at the front. You do have to be careful when stowing stuff in there that it doesn't fall out and start going underneath the driver's pedals and stuff like that. You also get some storage under here which you're not going to be able to see very well on camera, but that sort of, you can store stuff under here, and it comes all the way through out to the back passengers as well, so they can store stuff down here. I'll show you a little bit more about that when I show you the back of the car, but aside from that, you got some cup holders here, so if you do need to store any drinks or bottles, you can store them here, because they're not always going to fit very well in the door bins. You also get a glove box over here which opens very weirdly. Actually, it opens straight outwards like this, full of all sorts of stuff in there at the moment, so it is quite useful actually in terms of space. In the armrest, you've got some more storage which is sort of medium size, could be bigger, but again, I think the storage underneath robs some space, so you do still get that storage space, but it's just underneath. The access is slightly different. Aside from that, I'm going to show you the seats. So the seats are similar to the ones in the Kia. So I recently did a video of the Kia EV9. This car shares a lot of features with the Kia EV9, and the seats do also recline like they do in the Kia EV9. If you want to watch that video, you can click the link up here and you can watch that video. I've done an extensive in-depth walk around and review of that car, so you can check that out. But I'll show you some of the features of this car. So if I press this button by the driver, by the side of the driver's door, I can recline this seat all the way back, and that's quite useful for when I'm charging the car. And in fact, I've already taken this car to charge and I've used this function. And the passenger also can do the same thing, and there's some buttons on this side of the passenger seat, and if I press the button here, the passenger seat does the same thing as well. And it's quite useful that the driver can control that from here. So I can control the seat using these buttons over here. And that does really go quite far back, actually. You do have to be careful that there's nobody sat behind you. But yeah, actually being reclined has also reminded me to take a look at this sunroof that you get, the sort of glass roof, which is slightly tinted permanently like that. Actually, you can't change it so that it's clear. It does block the light coming in, but it still also lets some light come in, so it does make the cabin feel nice and airy. And if I press this button over here, I can close that, and it sort of closes from front and the back, and it meets in the middle. And if I click this button, you can open it out again. In terms of interior space, then I'll come back up using the memory seats. It's got memory function, so it can memorize your position, which I have got it set. If I come back up and I talk about the space in the cabin, yeah, there's a decent amount of space, as much as you're going to get in this particular car, but you do have to remember that this car has a 2.9 meter wheelbase, so that means that the interior space is going to be really well, and I'll show you a bit more about that when I take you into the back of the car. But aside from that, I think it's really quite good. This being the premium version, there are some features that are missing, just little things like the pedals on the sports and the sport plus versions. I believe come in aluminium, but they're just in sort of this plastic trim at the moment in this particular car. You also get a boost button on the steering wheel, which can take the car 0 to 60 in roughly around 4 seconds in those versions. In this particular car, it's about 7.9 or 7.8 seconds. So it's a little bit slower, but you don't feel it because the car has that instant torque, that instant acceleration from the electric motors. So you are really going to be getting a move on, and yeah, you're not going to miss all that extra power. I'll tell you a little bit more about that when I take you out to drive. But for now, let's take a look at the rear cabin, and I'll tell you exactly how much space it has in the back there, maybe for family or friends. So if you want to buy a Genesis GV60, chances are there'll be some times where you might have passengers that need to sit in the rear cabin. So let me tell you exactly what the rear cabin is like. So in terms of space, I've got enough legroom, although I feel like if the front seats were a little bit back, I might struggle with legroom, and the back of the seats are hard, so that might be a bit uncomfortable. But for the time being, I mean, I can sit comfortably, and I've still got loads of leg room. Room for my feet. If I do want to put them under the front seat, there's not a lot of space to do that. But in general, there's a great amount of room for your feet down here, and headroom. I'm not struggling with headroom. I mean, I really have to stretch to touch my head onto the ceiling. So even with that coupe shape, the rear cabin still does have loads of headroom. I suppose because the way the car is shaped, that sort of coupe shape, it sort of slopes down after the rear passenger's head, and there's not a lot of space robbed by the roof as well. You can see how it sort of comes down a little bit here, but where your head is, there's plenty of room back there. These seats are also heated, so the two passengers on the outer side get heated seats as well, which you can control using the button over here on the door. You've also got a cup holder here, and the other passenger has a cup holder there as well. A little bit narrow actually, so it won't fit all kinds of cups or bottles, but you can get more stuff in there. You get this this sort of cover for the sun as well, which you can put in there. It can protect rear passengers of the sun too, so that's pretty convenient. Other than that, the middle passenger in the rear won't struggle so much when it comes to the middle seat, because it's not that much of a bump. You can easily get over, and you've got leg room again because you do not have a transmission tunnel in this electric car. So overall, when it comes to passengers in the back, you got a decent amount of space. You've got loads of light coming in back here, and because the seats sit slightly high, you've got a relatively low door sill. Rear passengers will be able to see out pretty easily and pretty well. You got privacy glass as well, so people won't be able to see the rear passengers very easily back here. But aside from that, I mean, I think it's just as comfortable as the front, to be honest. I will mention this sort of armrest, which you can put down here, and you get 2 extra cup holders here as well. So if there are only 2 passengers back here, they can sit rather quite comfortably, and it should be great for long journeys. So what is the Genesis GV60 like to drive? Well, I've got the premium version, which is the entry level trim level, and it's also got the least amount of power. This particular one produces 229 horsepower and 350 newton meters of torque. So we're not going to be expecting it to be competitive with the higher trim levels, where you get over 400 horsepower in the Sport Plus version. So what's the 0 to 60 time? Well, in this car it's around 7.8 seconds or 7.9 seconds. In the Sport Plus version it's 4 seconds roughly. So it's a lot faster. It's abruptly faster actually. It's noticeably faster. But when it comes to that instant torque that you get from the electric motors, especially when you're taking off from a standstill, from a set of lights, or you're overtaking, it's more than adequate in this particular car. When it comes to the comfort of this car, now I'm really glad that I'm sat on the 19-inch wheels, because I suspect in the 20 and the 21-inch wheels it's going to be a little bit more harsh. The ride's going to be a bit more bumpy and a little bit more stiff. This car sits on a very sporty stance already, so you definitely do feel every bump in the road. The steering wheel is nice and light, great for maneuverability, especially in town and when it comes to parking, but that suspension isn't the best when it's in town, although it's not, I wouldn't say it's bad. It's more than adequate. When it comes to driving a little bit quicker, driving on motorways, driving on faster roads, this car is an absolute breeze. It really does have a nice smooth ride, and it's got a load of cool features that can help you. Loads of driver assists like lane keep assist, adaptive cruise control and all that sort of stuff. It can even keep, for short periods of time, keep the steering wheel pointing in the right direction to keep you within the lane. So that's really quite convenient. It makes long journeys really easy. When it comes to braking, so this particular car at high speeds, the brakes are really good, really easy to sense how much braking you need to put in. At slower speeds you do get that regeneration, so you do have to judge it a little bit better. But when it comes to parking, when it comes to maneuvering around car parks, for example, this car is really easy. Apart from the turning circle, the turning circle is 11.8 meters, so just shy, or I think it's 11.9 meters actually. It's just shy of 12 meters, which is a big turning circle. And if you know, a car of this size, you would think it's really quite agile when it comes to turning around. But when it is quite agile, but it's got a long wheelbase, hasn't it? 2.9 meters long. And the car itself is 4.5 meters long in total, so it's got a pretty big wheelbase. And when it comes to turning around, 3-point turns can sometimes turn into 5-point turns, so that is important to know. I do want to mention these flappy paddles that I've talked about earlier in the video. So these flappy paddles, they tell you what level of regeneration you get in from the brake pedal, or when you take your foot off the acceleration. So you basically how much energy it harvests back into the system. So right now I've got it fully off, so when I take my foot off the accelerator, the car will just coast ahead. But if I turn that, let's say I'll turn it to level 2. Now if I take my foot off the accelerator, there's a noticeable brake when it comes to it, and I can put that all the way to max level, and if I take my foot off the accelerator now, it's really quite harsh in the way that it brakes actually, but it can bring the car to a full stop. So that's quite useful. It's basically like one pedal driving, I suppose. If that's what you want to do in the city, it's really convenient for when you're going up and down hills. So if you're like, when I'm going up the hills, I'll turn the recuperation fully off so I can just coast when I get up the hill, like so. But then as I'm coming down the hill, depending on how steep that hill is and what speed I'm coming down on, I will press the recuperation and I'll turn it slightly higher, and therefore it'll keep me going down the hill at a constant speed, and that's really useful. It's almost like a hill descent system that you've got going on there. So yeah, it's really useful. There's loads of cool features of this car that make it suitable for everyday driving, but it's also suitable to drive on the motorway. What sort of economy do you get from this particular car? Well, obviously that depends on certain factors like the way that you drive, and it also depends on certain factors like what the climate, the temperature is like. It claims that you can get around 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour. I've been seeing anywhere between 3.5 to 4 miles per kilowatt hour actually, especially when you've got a nice smooth right foot. I mean, sometimes it is a bit of a game I like to play, where I like to try and be as economical as I can, and I have seen figures as high as 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So that's really quite convenient. With the 77 kilowatt hour battery, we're talking easily over 300 miles of range on a full charge with this car. So yeah, it's got the sort of features that you need that can take you on long journeys. It could charge super fast as well. So yeah, I think when it comes to this car as a whole, overall, it's a good package you get here. It's really nice and premium in the way that it looks and the way that it feels, and in the way that it drives. It's got similar driving style of Hyundais and Kias. So yeah, you're going to expect reliability, and you're going to expect comfort and refinement. So that's pretty good as well. When it comes to the price of this car, well, it starts at roughly just over £53,000. The one that I'm driving today comes in at just over £60,000 because of some optional extras, including the paintwork that we've got. There's also a plug socket, which I didn't mention, that you get at the back, a 3-pin plug socket, which I can't actually open because you need a key to unlock. But yeah, that's an optional extra. Yeah, overall I think £60,000 is more than you would expect for a car of this particular segment. You've got your Kia's Kia GT6, and you've got your Hyundai Ioniq 5. Now those cars are cheaper than this car, but then you've also got other cars in this particular segment like your Teslas and your Audis, which are more expensive. So this car sits sort of slightly in the middle, and I think with it being luxury and premium, I think it's mostly worth it. It's just a case of if you want to splash out that extra money for this particular car, I think it's enjoyable every day. So yeah, definitely go check one out. I think it's something which you need to see, if at the very least to know what you're looking for and to know what to expect in the sort of cars that you're looking to buy. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you do want to watch some of my other videos, I'll put the link up now. If you press this button here, you can see a video of the Kia EV9, which is similar to this car, and if you press this button here, you can see a video of the Nissan Ariya. That's quite an interesting one that you might want to watch, especially if you're interested in this particular segment of car. So thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video, and take care.